Hello, everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, I want to talk about polyamory. So, what comes to your mind when I ask you to picture a polyamorous person? The stereotype many will think of, I am sure, is someone like this: a nerdy, purple-haired person who lives in an apartment with 3 cats, 2 husbands, and a dining room overflowing with board games. Within the community, there's often a joke that people are polyamorous, not for love or for physical affection, but because they just need one more person for their D&D campaign. It is so prevalent that it's even known outside the community as well. I believe this contributes to why you hear certain mean comments about polyamorous people. You know, the ones where people say, oh, polyamorous people are all weird, ugly nerds, and they have to be polyamorous because no one would want them in a monogamous, real relationship. Or they believe that polyamory is just the latest in a long line of unforgivable internet sins. You know, being a feminist, SJW, queer, agender, polyamorous loser. Emphasis on the loser. And that's because, for some folks, polyamory is now seen as connected to the cringe, awkward part of nerd culture. And well, I can't argue with the fact that nerd culture is still one of the few places in society where you will see any level of representation of polyamory. That doesn't mean people are better about it, though, or that representation is particularly good. So that brings us to the topic of today's video. Enter Gabe Hicks, aka Gabe James Games. I know him from hosting a short-lived Dimension 20 series called Shriek Week, widely regarded as the company's worst tabletop RPG game attempt to date. The players wanted a more standard action-adventure game, whereas Gabe wanted to run a romance sim. The gulf between their expectations led to a confused and unsatisfying experience for most viewers, though some at least reportedly appreciated where it ended up by the final episode. This is not to say that Gabe has been unsuccessful in the game industry, however, far from it. They've also worked as a game designer at Roll20, they have done cosplay, they have been featured on the Twitch channel for D&D, as well as written for Critical Role. And if you don't know anything about tabletop games, don't worry. The TLDR version is basically, they've worked with some really big companies. That means they've probably been successful. Gabe's crowning jewel, though, is Mythic Grove, saying that he focuses on highlighting smaller creators to give them a platform and opportunity through streaming, design, writing, or other creative mediums with the projects that Mythic Grove creates. And as a fellow creator, this Mythic Grove thing sounds great. Highlighting smaller creators is something that is genuinely very helpful for getting a foothold on social media. It's hard to get noticed these days, even on places like TikTok, and I am pretty sure that I wouldn't have a career myself if other folks didn't take a chance on me early on. And these positive values are something that seems to be pretty common with Gabe, or at least in the way that Gabe talks about himself. In the description provided for a speaking engagement at an event called GDC, he claims that, quote, his experience is only matched by his passion for accessibility across the board. And by the way, if you don't know this, these little blurbs are something that creators have to write about themselves. So this is him saying that he's uber passionate about accessibility, not someone else writing that for him. I guess unless he hired a copy editor for just this one thing. But in any case, he seems like a great guy, right? He's gotten to work with all these amazing companies, he's building a brand with Mythic Grove, and he has quite a sizable audience with nearly 60K followers on Twitter. He has even managed to crowdfund over $170,000 for his Session Zero system project on Kickstarter, which is well over 3 times the original goal. Everything was looking up for Gabe. His star was certainly rising. Well, until it wasn't, and that's why I'm making this video. So, where to begin this angle of the story? I think let's begin simply here. Gabe had a partner. His partner was a person named Cam. Cam was another content creator and cosplayer with a pretty sizable but modest following on TikTok. They'd met last August at Gen Con and originally had a polyamorous relationship where they were primary partners to each other. Now, it's worth noting that Cam says that they were polyamorous, leading me to believe this is part of who they were before meeting Gabe. Despite what the internet might have you believe, some polyamorous relationships do actually really start with 2 polyamorous people meeting each other. I swear it is possible. They are not all created just by someone coercing their spouse into just trying it or whatever, but I digress. Rant for another video. I've talked about that before. Eventually, though, Gabe supposedly wanted to close the relationship and asked to be monogamous, to which Cam then agreed. Over the course of their relationship, Cam fell in love, and they lived happily ever after in monogamous bliss, and nothing bad ever happened at all. At the end, don't look at the runtime. Stop looking at the runtime. Okay, the jig is up. No, sadly, that is not what ended up happening. Not even a little bit. So, at the end of March, another cosplayer and mid-sized content creator named Jillian came forward about their experience with Gabe. You see, Gabe had been leading a double life. While Cam was under the impression that they were monogamous, and Gabe was merely flirtatious and maybe had some obsessive fans, something very different was going on. Cam was told that Jillian was one of these obsessed fans who didn't respect boundaries. Jillian was, in reality, dating Gabe and thought Cam was another, albeit casual partner, making them metamors. Jillian spent the weekend of PAX East, a large gaming convention, trying to develop a connection with somebody she thought was her partner's partner. Meanwhile, Cam thought she was trying to essentially evade a stalker who did not have a good sense of boundaries. Gabe, meanwhile, was spinning tall tales to each one of them. To one, he would go, "Oh, yeah, no, that's just a weird fan. I don't even like her, but, I have to pretend to be nice." And to the other, he'd say something like, "Yeah, that's Cam. I mean, we date, but it's just casual, Now, how on God's green earth he thought he would be able to keep up with this charade, I will never know, but he went to some lengths to maintain it. In an attempt to defend Cam and Gabe from this delusional fan, many prominent members of the gaming community pledged to never work with Jillian, including allegedly the staff of Dropout, who produced Dimension 20. All the while, Gabe had been asking Jillian for advice about his relationship with Cam like she was any other friend or partner, as though he wasn't silently ruining her career in the background. The absolute gall. I mean, even after having written this and read about it, repeating it now gets me up. Okay. But unfortunately, lies like this one are rather like bed bugs. If you even find just a few on the surface, there's bound to be more, way more, if you look a little bit harder. So soon, another aggrieved ex-partner came forward. You guessed it, another small to mid-sized cosplay content creator named Maisie. And rather than tell her that he was polyamorous and dating someone, he told her that he was single. when in fact, he was so not single that he was telling at least one other person that he was in love with them and taking them home to meet his parents. So we have one person who thinks that they're in love, one person who thinks that he's single, and one person who thinks he's polyamorous. I know. This has continued to grow to the point where there are now allegedly at least 6 people involved with Gabe, none of whom had accurate information, if any, about the other people that he was seeing. And this is not even counting the people he openly flirted with or the people that he had hookups with. And also, very sadly, it seems that fidelity was not the only value that Gabe betrayed. Remember all that stuff he said about highlighting smaller creators with his company and being really inclusive? It turns out he was smack-talking just about everyone he worked with or dated to everyone else that he worked with or dated. Real creepshow art type behavior. Yeah, I'm bringing that reference back. Telling one person he is so proud of them and their hard work out of one side of his mouth and denigrating them with the other. Flirting with someone and sleeping with them, then calling them obsessive and, I'm gonna have to say it, calling people brats, saying he loved someone and then telling other people he didn't even want to be in a relationship with them. At one point, he allegedly dated an autistic person for years, all the while using that known fact to explain to other people that they were a fan who couldn't take a hint. You know, because of the autism. Not because he'd been dating them for 3 years before just ghosting them one day, allegedly. Just truly the most mind-bogglingly two-faced, mean-spirited stuff. It's really genuinely to the point where I have trouble wrapping my mind around it. Like, how do you have this many people in your life that you simultaneously say you love and care about, but you also say you hate them and you don't like them and you think they're duller than rocks? Which part of what you say about which person at what time is actually the truth? Maybe Gabe doesn't even really know. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to date this guy, because I am getting confused just reading about it. Like, at least when a guy has a second secret family most of the time, it's like a one and done deal. Like, one complete story here, one complete story there, not like a hodgepodge of like a dozen different things all happening. If anything, this just proves the adage I'm going back to more and more these days. That you can't believe people when they say who they are. You have to believe people when they show you. A person might say they're a sex-positive feminist ally who believes in accessibility, but in reality, they can be an ableist and a hateful misogynist liar just like anyone else. And this isn't even something that is new to nerd culture. The most famous example who comes to mind is Joss Whedon, someone who made being a male ally part of their public persona for years, if not decades, all the while he was allegedly mistreating staff and actresses on his sets. Not to mention the fact that more than a few of those sets seemed to be places he wanted to express his, we're gonna go with special, intimate interests. Just lovely. And so I come at this from the angle of people in positions of authority or fame misusing that to be able to lie and take advantage of power differentials. Was Mythic Grove an opportunity to give him access to smaller creators he could date and simultaneously dismiss as clingy wannabes? Maybe someone should look into that. I'm just saying. It's a concept I am no stranger to, being in the kink community myself. It is a well-known issue that often the people who peacock the hardest about being safe little ooh small beans or being the one trustworthy authority are actually the people who are the most likely to be serial violators. Saying things like, I'm a feminist, I'm inclusive, you can trust me, I promise, can be a shield because it creates an easy, well, but he doesn't seem like that kind of person. Look at the things that they say defense. It is gross, it is malicious, and it is calculated. But this, curiously, is not the aspect of this scenario the internet grabbed onto. Oh, no, of course not. Because if that was it, I probably wouldn't be making this video, because it would have been handled. No, the internet went straight to, wait, they're polyamorous? That part of the story. Some of the quote retweets and top comments under the original post revealing all of this say things like, that's why I don't do poly relationships. Too many things can go wrong. And stuff like this is exactly why people don't trust poly people sometimes. This disappointing trend I've noticed over the last few months seems to be building into a full-on tidal wave. It's so mainstream that John Oliver has even made jokes about it recently. I'm actually working on a much larger video that will be out soon, hopefully, fingers crossed, explaining why I think this is happening. But for now, I just want to acknowledge that this is, in fact, a thing that happens. To the point that around the same time these stories were coming out about Gabe's alleged misconduct, a whole other post was gaining traction for talking about cheating subreddits. Yep. That's right. If you didn't know, there are apparently whole subreddits or people, mostly men, let's be honest, talk about getting away with cheating on their spouses, sometimes acknowledging they have literally no reason to. You know, the wives are still young and they're beautiful and they have beautiful children and they don't nag them and all of that stuff. And to be clear, women do also cheat, I think actually in similar numbers, but these subreddits, a lot of men on them. You know, the wives doing everything right. But the cheating spouses do it for the thrill, the taboo, to assure themselves of their masculinity and their value or whatever. But sometimes they get caught and they start panicking and the results are divinely karmic. I bring this up because seeing the responses to this post brought the rest of the story into a new light. I really have had trouble understanding why so many people have been so quick to blame polyamory, when it's clear from the details, if you follow along, that healthy polyamory, open, honest polyamory, could have easily been an option for him. But he chose not to do it. And it turns out, I think a lot of people leap on blaming the polyamory because a lot of people think that monogamous people don't cheat. More precisely, that if you cheat, that is the opposite of monogamy, and because you're doing the opposite of monogamy, you can't be monogamous. And from, a certain angle, a certain perspective, there's a grain of truth there. If you do, in fact, have multiple sexual and or romantic partners, even if you aren't open about it, that does fall under most people's understanding of what non-monogamy is. So, of course, if you hear someone who cheated, is or was polyamorous, you'd go, what they expect. People who cheat are never monogamous after all, because when you cheat, you're not doing monogamy. And that just really adds a new context to the take that polyamory is just cheating with extra steps, because I guess some folks literally mean this. If polyamorous people cheat, it proves polyamory is bad and wrong, and if monogamous people cheat, it proves they aren't monogamous, I guess. I feel like when I'm saying this, you all are not going to believe me, but genuinely, this is the conclusion some people have reached, is like, well, they were cheating, therefore they were never monogamous. And I guess this way of looking at cheating is way too simplistic. People cheat for lots of reasons. Sometimes it's because they secretly yearn to love multiple people at the same time, but they don't know how to do it properly. But oftentimes it is for other reasons. Having a dead bedroom and not wanting to put in the work to fix it. The allure of the taboo. The feeling of getting one over on a partner or maintaining power in the relationship. So on and so forth. A lot of cheaters would be more accurately described as serial monogamous, people who leapfrog from one relationship to the next, sometimes with a degree of overlap. That could be cheating. It could be having someone who's just a friend you've got a much more close connection with than you're letting on. Or it could mean hopping on the dating apps and just browsing as soon as you decide you want to end things. Maybe you never match with anybody, maybe you never send a message, but you want to know what's on the market before you commit to ending a relationship. And a lot of cheaters say they actually want to stay with their spouses. They might even wish that they were really exclusive again, but the thrill of cheating is simply too good to be able to give up. Not sure how much stock I put in a cheater's opinion about cheating, but there you go. So, no, to be clear, I don't actually think that polyamory is what caused the problems here. But it also isn't totally innocent either. Polyamory, when Gabe chose to use it as a label, was just one among many safety signifiers he could use when pursuing relationships. You can trust them because look how much they care about queer folks and women and representation and accessibility. They get it. They're just like you. They're one of you. They're safe. And when you're charming and skilled in leading people on, that can work for a while. Most people don't start a polyamorous relationship expecting that the other person is hiding 6+ other people in the shadows. That would be ridiculous. You are polyamorous, so you can be open. Why hide everyone? And sure, there's red flags sometimes if someone is super standoffish when you press for details about other partners, or they don't want to share their social media or things like that. But if someone says confidently and openly that they are polyamorous and these are the people that they're dating and they're just casual, you tend to believe them because that seems way more reasonable than like, oh, I'm poly, but I can't tell my wife, so you can't call me after 5 p.m. And maybe that's actually part of the lesson here. You can't take someone's word for it. In the kitchen table versus parallel polyamory debate, I am squarely in the parallel camp for myself, but that is not without its downsides. Maybe we should be doing more work to reach out to metamors or potential metamors. Maybe we should vet our partners in polyamory the way we do in kink. Talk to other folks who know them. Try to get a fuller picture before we pursue anything. See them in more social settings around other polyamorous people. See if they have any skeletons in their closet they aren't telling us about directly. But this is not to put the blame or the responsibility on the people who get cheated on or people who have partners lie to them. Not in the slightest. Please do not mistake this point for that. People who lie are doing something wrong, and they are taking advantage of people by exploiting their assumption of trustworthiness and good intentions, and that is messed up no matter how you slice it. I don't think there's ever a way to make sure 100% you are not being lied to, especially in a long distance or a more casual relationship. How can you know if someone is telling the truth when you ask for your metamor's contact info and your mutual partner replies that that isn't something the meta is comfortable with? Do you potentially violate someone's boundaries and try to find another way to reach out to them regardless? There's legitimate reasons why partners may not want to be in close contact with other partners. So it seems to me the best thing we can do is trust our gut and be open with each other as polyamorous people in a shared community, whenever that's possible. We might not be able to contact each other directly, at least not all the time, but chances are we're friends with a friend of a metamor's ex or another partner, and they might be able to tell you if they saw so-and-so getting all lovey-dovey on someone else who they said they're not into or that they're only casually dating at the polyamorous meetup across town last week. I know the power of the internet can do many things. Earlier today, before filming, I read a story where a woman was abandoned by her husband, and within 24 hours, they found this guy across the country in Texas based on like 2 photos and the fact that he's a chef, okay? We can figure this stuff out, especially when it comes to public figures. The real way to fix this, though, is to hold cheaters responsible. Now, I do think there are ways for people who mess up in polyamory to get better if they truly accept that what they did was wrong and they acknowledge why it was wrong. If they offer genuine amends to people they hurt and they put together a concrete plan to change and stick to it, and they show progress over time. Though this usually means giving up positions of authority and stepping back from polyamory altogether, which are 2 things I have rarely seen people do willingly. Give them a few months and they are almost always back at the local meetup groups or starting a new one somewhere where people don't know their name. Which brings us back to Gabe. After all of this came to light, what did Gabe do? Did they finally stick by their stated values and do what's right? Well, I'll let you be the judge on that one. Shortly after this came out, they made a post that said, quote, "I've hurt plenty, and the problems I've caused go deep. I need to remove myself from doing more harm and also taking responsibility. Right now, taking responsibility looks like holding myself accountable and getting therapy while stepping back from my social media presence. There's no excuse and no validation. Causing harm continuously made me part of a problem I've claimed to want to help solve. I'm remorseful and hopeful that in this healing, I actively learn to never put anyone in this situation again." Now, as far as I can tell, the people he hurt have not yet gotten a direct apology. And this post hits a lot of the expected social media apology guidelines. Be vague as heck so people who don't already know the details will not figure them out. Promise to go to therapy, say you're taking a break to get better, and leave the door open for a later comeback. And the cherry on top here was the later deletion, or at least deactivation, of their social media presence. Will they be back? Almost definitely. As we have seen time and time again, the only people who stay truly canceled are those who cancel themselves. Maybe he won't come back in a visible way, but no doubt there will be people somewhere in the TTRPG world who will take pity and say that he's grown, he's changed, he's a different person now, he deserves to have a second chance. And maybe they'll be right. But it is pretty dang hard for folks to know that when an accountability process looks like disappearing off the internet and popping up again months or years later saying, "Hey guys, I got therapy, I super duper pinky promise I'm better now." And really, when you think about it, when has that worked? Shane Dawson? Colleen Ballinger? They've all said they got therapy. Are they better? Do you want them back on the internet? And this is not to that scale, but just consider that for a moment. So how am I so sure of this? Because this has actually happened before in a very similar gaming space. Does anyone here remember ProJared? The guy who had a massive falling out with his now ex-wife thanks to his relationship with another creator named Holly? Oh, and this also led to, I believe, client-therapist text messages being leaked, and also ProJared solicited his fans for intimate contact on a private whatever, I remember what it was exactly, Tumblr blog? Yeah, that guy still has a channel. He still gets work. He might have gone from 1 million subs to a high 800,000, but he's still around. And I think at least partly because he put out a very convincing debunk the lies type video when all this happened, he was able to cast doubt on everything that had been accused up to that point. And I'm not here to relitigate what happened with ProJared, but I can say, if nothing else, that it was 1000% wrong to have an account where you could interact with fans in a sexual or a flirty context. And maybe this is just because I'm an educator and I'm not like a random gaming YouTuber, but I have pretty firm boundaries with this. The idea of doing anything like that, having a form where that would even be possible, is just so instinctually wrong to me, and it is a huge red flag when any other creators do it. Do you sometimes meet people in real life who are really cool, who vaguely know your content or recognize you after a while? Sure, especially in kink and niche hobbies, it happens. But that's totally different than interacting with fans online in a way that's most likely to capitalize on a parasocial relationship to your advantage. Just know, don't go there. There's no reason to. I don't think ProJared does this kind of thing anymore, but the fact it had to be pointed out and his career still survived truly says something. So, what this all leads me to is the fact that I believe, no, Gabe will likely not be permanently canceled if you're worried about that. They might even be back before the end of 2024 with a ProJared style retort of their own. But trying to fuel a cancellation isn't why I wanted to make this video. I'm not even really sure if I care that much if he's online or not because I don't know how much of a difference it makes. But I wanted to talk about this person, this scenario, because of how it's been used to fuel the polyamory is bad narrative that has really been cropping up lately. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that this time, unlike what's happened before, there were people speaking up to say we shouldn't blame the polyamory. Can we get more of that in the future, please? But just to throw my own opinion in there, for what it's worth, I also think we need to be cautious about blaming polyamory, if you are doing that. As I discussed, claiming polyamory may have actually been used as a shield, at least some of the time in the situation, and that fact should not be ignored. But when vanilla monogamous relationships fail, even in spectacular and public ways, we almost never blame the monogamy. If someone cheats or runs away with a babysitter or accuses a spouse of violence, we don't go, yes, well, this is simply just proof for why monogamy never works. Obviously, humans are not biologically programmed to be monogamous. This is the obvious end result for all monogamous relationships. But people will do that for non-monogamous relationships. This knee-jerk blaming conveniently sidesteps the actual conversations that need to be had. It takes the focus away from the aspects that were bigger factors here, like taking advantage of a position of social proof or authority, using your ally status or queer status as a you can trust me shield, and potentially targeting smaller creators so they would be less likely to speak out, and then being able to damage their careers in meaningful ways in the process. If we blame polyamory for leading to bad behavior, that behavior will never really change if it was in fact not the polyamory which was the problem. We would simply be looking in the wrong direction. Just like the memory of Armie Hammer became that one weird guy in Hollywood who was into cannibalism and not the substance of what he was actually accused of, could the memory here change too? Instead of the person who badmouthed and two-timed countless people and took advantage of their position, will they instead become that one polyamorous DM who was cringe about it? I really hope not. And again, I want to be clear, I am not settled on whether or not I think like a cancellation is the appropriate policy here, because I mean, when you look at the parallels to other creators like ProJared, like Creepshow Art, a lot of them were fully ran off of the internet. I think actually more so for like the talking bad about other creators thing than the cheating thing, if I'm being entirely honest about that. But it almost kind of doesn't matter. Like, I really feel like in this day and age, your opinion about whether or not somebody should be canceled is irrelevant, because the only thing that really truly cancels people is them deciding to be canceled because they can't take the heat. Like, James Somerton still has his YouTube channel up. He renamed it. He had a little bit of a comeback moment once or twice. But I'm pretty sure in a year or two, he's gonna be back. Or he's gonna be behind the scenes of somebody else's videos, and it's not gonna be his name or face on the content, but he's gonna be in the production somewhere. I am almost sure of it. So I don't really know. I'm not saying this is like the worst thing ever, but like, again, like I was saying, oh my gosh, how like so many different stories they were going to eventually catch up with you. And I've kind of avoided talking about a more mental health angle with this one, because I think there's always going to be, it's just, I feel like it's really not for us to speculate on that, because we are not mental health providers and not his mental health provider. But the volume and diversity and almost like habitual instinctual lying about this makes me wonder if there's like a deeper issue here, that it's not just like, oh, I like cheating because it's fun and it makes me feel good, but like maybe there's like another problem that makes it like chronically difficult to tell the truth. I mean, it feels weird to say like impulsive liar, or like there's some term I'm forgetting the word for right now that's like somebody who always lies all the time, like can't really help themselves, like the kleptomaniac of lying, whatever that is. But I don't know. It's hard, y'all. I'm thankful that the polyamorous discourse here got a little bit more of a rebuttal than it normally would, but like, I am exhausted. All of this, I don't know where all this poly discourse is coming from. I don't like it. It makes my brain hurt. And in case you needed a reminder, telling different people you love them, you're single, you're polyamorous, you're monogamous, blah, blah, blah. That's not what polyamory is. Please don't blame it on that. Even people who seem really nice and really friendly and like good people can be bad, shitty people, especially people you only know through the internet, okay? Always be skeptical. And on that note, I would love to hear thoughts about this one in a comment down below, especially if you are somebody who is into tabletop games, or if you're polyamorous, if you're more close to this space than I am. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what you're thinking and feeling, because this is a big blow up we have not seen for a long time in that arena, and I haven't really seen other people talk about this, and I feel like it is definitely a worthwhile subject to discuss, especially as polyamory becomes more and more mainstream. But in any case, if you like this, if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of different kink and BDSM related topics, as well as asexuality, queer issues, polyamory, so on and so forth. And finally, if you really did enjoy this, if you want to support what I do, the best way you can do that is with Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.